Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Chris. If you're new here, like I said, my name is Chris and I like to talk about books on the internet. So lately I've been reminiscing a lot on my childhood and looking back at younger Chris and thinking about my reading journey and what ultimately led me to this channel here today. These thoughts were brought on by the Q&A that I did, where one of the questions was something along the lines of what were your favorite books when you were younger, or I think it was what started your reading journey. I can't remember exactly. I thought it would be fun for me to look back on the books that really shaped me as a kid and what books continue to define me into my adulthood. So I'm gonna go through some of the books that I really loved as a kid and separate them into eras, so to speak, of which books I liked at which points in my life. I think reflecting on this is a great way to see the impact that literature has on children and the importance of reading as a child, but that's besides the point. So let's get into the first book series that really made me fall in love with reading. So circa 2007, when I was a wee little lad, I discovered the Magic Treehouse series. The Magic Treehouse series is an early reader chapter book series about these two siblings who have a treehouse in their backyard that will spin and teleport them to any era that they want. They go to see the dinosaurs, they go and become ninjas, they go to ancient Egypt, all of these incredible adventures. These were the first books that little Chris could read on his own, and I would always feel so accomplished when I finished one and could check out a new one, because I really felt like I was flying through these books. I think probably realistically I was in fact not flying through these books, but it really felt like I was going on these adventures with my friends, and then I would check out a new one and it would be a whole new theme, like, oh, now I get to go to be cowboys with them, or oh, now I get to go to a volcanic eruption. Like, it just really felt like each book was a completely different journey, and when I finished one I was so excited to go on the next journey. I remember in 3rd grade I finished one of these in one reading hour sitting, and I was like, yeah, I'd finished this whole book just now. And realistically I was like reading very, very fast and probably missed a ton of information, but to me I was like the god of reading at that point. Last year I was an elementary school librarian. I am no longer a librarian. I'm not returning this year for personal reasons that I'm not going to talk about, but the Magic Treehouse books that were in that library were not checked out. Like, the kids did not care about Magic Treehouse. They were like old books, and it broke my heart so bad to see the Magic Treehouse books just stranded on the shelves. Oh. So the Magic Treehouse series was my first foray into actually reading on my own, and it really set the foundation for the books to come. So next we moved to 2009, where I was in 4th grade and I discovered in my school library the Guardians of Ga'Hoole series. So if you're not familiar with the Guardians of Ga'Hoole series, it was made into a movie, and it's about these owls that are searching for this mystical tree of Ga'Hoole that is said to have this ancient magical society of owls, and it's been a myth, but they're searching for it. And I think that was actually just book 1, but then book 2 and on, let me not spoil. I mean, I don't know if you're going to read it, but just in case. Guardians of Ga'Hoole marks the transition into actual chapter books that have a little bit more substance, and I think this was a cornerstone in my reading development and also in my continuing love for owls. Looking back, the series honestly had a lot of mature themes. Like, there was owl warfare, intense warfare, there was like brainwashing, there was, I think, cannibalism? Did I just make that up? That might be completely wrong. I also think this is why I really love fantasy nowadays, was because I was so enraptured by this owl society that the fantasy was just like seeping into me, and I was like, I need more escapism. Benji and I also rewatched the movies recently, and it was good. Like, that was Oscar-worthy cinema. Okay, that was iconic. Guardians of Ga'Hoole shaping owl fans since 2009. Reading the Guardians of Ga'Hoole series also set me up for this ravenous reading adventure that happened next, which I will get to now. That is the Rick Riordan extravaganza. I don't know what word to say. Around 2010 to 2011, I discovered the Rick Riordan books, and let me just tell you that it altered some brain chemistry going on. Like, I will never be the same because I was thoroughly convinced that I was a demigod. If you're not familiar, Rick Riordan writes those Greek mythology books, like the Percy Jackson books, the Lost Heroes series, but also like the Egypt mythology books, the Red Pyramid or the Kane Chronicles. And then I think he has branched out into other mythology, but this changed me. I think it was the way that Rick Riordan makes you feel like you're a main character. Like from the very first page, he's like, if you found this book, then you're the one, and if you go to this locker, I won't tell you which locker, but if you're the chosen one, you'll know, and then you'll open the combination, and then you're not safe anymore, like you're gonna be hunted. And so I was like, I am the main character. Just to give you a quick rundown, the Percy Jackson series follows Percy, who is the son of Poseidon, and there is a camp where there are all of the kids of the gods, and they get sorted into their cabins based on who their godly parents are, and they all have powers. And then Percy goes on this quest with Grover and Annabeth, and it's like this incredibly epic YA Greek mythology story. Not only was I obsessed with Percy Jackson, but I also loved the Kane Chronicles. That series was incredible at the time. It follows Egypt mythology though, and it was something that I devoured after I had ate all of the Percy Jackson books up, and I needed more. And then I really honestly think the Kane Chronicles is highly underrated, so check that out if you want something YA. I can't even begin to explain the Rick Riordan epidemic that happened in that time with just kids around the globe. Like, it was intense. You had to be there, and if you lived through it, then you know how all-consuming that era was. I would also mark this as when young Chris started gaining real sentience, where I became like a full human being capable of making my own reading choices, and this was all I wanted to read. And it really set the stage for diving into more difficult literature. I think I really owe a lot of my love for reading to this moment in time and the nostalgia of finishing one of those books. I think I really can mark that as an incredibly important time in my reading journey. Next up, we move to 2012, which you can likely guess is going to be the almighty, all-powerful, dystopian wave of books. Okay. During this time, there were two series in particular that had me in such a chokehold, which was obviously the Hunger Games and the Divergent series. And I'm not the only victim of this all-consuming dystopian tsunami. Okay. This was also when fandom culture on Facebook and Tumblr was really kicking off, and I was so into it on those internet spaces, and it just fueled my love for the Hunger Games and for Divergent and for reading in general. If for some reason you don't know what the Hunger Games series or the Divergent series is about, the Hunger Games is about a dystopian future America where they make children fight to the death, and Divergent series is about a society where they sort you into factions based on your personality type. So there's like the selfless faction, the brave faction, the smart faction, the kind faction, stuff like that. And I think why this was so revolutionary for me was because this was around the time when I started to think about society in a deeper way, because I was like 12. I started to actually, process the world around me, our government, how things were set up. And I thought it was so fascinating in these dystopian books how things could change so drastically and what a potential dystopian future would look like. I thought that was just so incredibly fascinating. This also fed deeper into the whole I'm the main character fantasy, because the Rick Riordan books for me were telling me, like, you are the main character, like if you found this book you're in trouble. These books were more so like I could be the hero in a story, and I think that's why they were so gripping to me, was because I was escaping into them and they were telling me, like, you don't need to be a strong alpha male character in order to make a difference in the world. And as a feminine gay boy, I was like, wow, I could make some change. So I was active on like Hunger Games meme pages on Facebook. I was on Tumblr reblogging Hunger Games edits, Divergent edits. Like, I was in there deep. I was clocked in daily it was a full-time job and I never missed a day. Even now, I will still gravitate towards dystopian if I see one, like dystopian horror or dystopian sci-fi thriller. I will still like look into that because that genre has really shaped me, and I still find it so fascinating what images of the future we can come up with. Lastly, we move into around 2014, where Tumblr started doing some damage. If you don't know what Tumblr is, it's a blog website where you reblog posts and you curate your blog, and this was kind of the cultural center of internet fandom, internet culture in general in like this time period. So while I was on Tumblr exploring Hunger Games Tumblr, Divergent Tumblr, and I guess just book fandom Tumblr in general, I also branched out into more, seems ridiculous to say now, but more aesthetic books or more heightened intellectual books for kids of that age. And I have two I want to mention here that I feel I really loved at this age and that really shaped me. And the first one is none other than The Fault in Our Stars. Fault in Our Stars was so deep at this age. Like, okay was the most artistic thing I had ever heard in my entire life. Like, it was a cultural shift. If you're not familiar with The Fault in Our Stars, it's by John Green, and it's about our main character who has cancer, and she falls in love with this boy named Augustus Waters, who she learns has terminal cancer, and then they go on one extravagant trip to Germany and they fall in love. The Fault in Our Stars single-handedly opened me up to books and literature in general that makes me think about deeper themes like mortality or what it means to love and life, and just very broad things of that nature that up until that point I didn't really think about much because I was 13. Also, Shailene Woodley, who was the star of the Divergent movie, was also the star of the Fault in Our Stars movie, so that was like a book world collide moment. I remember my close friend on her Tumblr page, it was titled Augustus Waters in this like beautiful gray font, and she had all these beautifully artistic and aesthetic reblogs, and I thought it was the peak of design. The Fault in Our Stars leads me into the second and last major book of my adolescence, which was The Perks of Being a Wallflower. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is about our main character, Charlie, who's highly introverted, and he's used to being a wallflower, watching life pass him by, watching it from the sidelines and just being observant. And he meets these two kids that are extremely extroverted and work to get him out of his shell and help him pursue writing and expose him to a bunch of new different things. And I still think it's a really beautiful story. The Perks of Being a Wallflower really shaped me as an adolescent, and I still love that book. I would still recommend it because I think it helped me deal with a lot of the themes of growing up about friendship and love and discovering yourself and your own importance without it being overly cliche. I remember finding this book on Tumblr and seeing people reblogging things about it, and I thought they were so cool for reading a book that artsy, and so I read it and I felt like I was the coolest person in the world and also just incredibly intellectual. Outside of reading that book for how I thought it would make me seem and feel, it actually did really hit me very hard as I related a lot to the main character, and I have a special place in my heart for that book. I remember the Rocky Horror Picture Show is a big part of that book, and at that age I had no idea what that was, and I was reading it and I was like, well, whatever the Rocky Horror Picture Show is, it must be so cool. It's the coolest thing ever. And then I discovered what it was and I was like, oh wow, this is so weird, but I'm interested. This book had me thinking seriously about literature because there were some quotes that I thought were the most poetic things in the world at the time, and I still really love them just for the nostalgia. And those quotes were, "We accept the love we think we deserve," which was a huge one on Tumblr, and also, "In that moment, I swear we were infinite." I think at 14, after reading The Perks of Being a Wallflower, I started to read with a little bit more nuance, a little bit more active participation, rather than just being someone on the sidelines reading things, watching it go by. It made me think more of how books impact me in my real life and how I can apply things that I'm learning from these fictional characters to my own life, if that makes sense. So those are the books that really impacted me as a child, and I've been wanting to just kind of reminisce a little bit, and I think this was a really fun way for me to just talk about the ways that I've been influenced as a reader, especially growing up. So thank you for listening to me ramble on, and I really appreciate it as always. I'm really curious to know what books impacted you as a child, so comment them down below if you made it this far. I want to know what books really inspired you and moved you along on your reading journey. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.